He's back! He's back, everybody!
I knew you were going to do that. You're funny.
Hello. We have about 50 minutes, 50 minutes. My name is Karen Boite. I am a member of the Ontario Autism Coalition. We are a group of parents, of autistic self-advocates, of therapists, of doctors, of grandparents, of family members, of children and adults on the autism spectrum. We speak truth to power. We are an activist group. We do some protesting, we do some lobbying, we drink a lot of coffee, and we work very hard. So this is the OAC. This guy over here, who are you? Who are you, sir?
Bruce McIntosh on
Bruce
a good day.
McIntosh. Bruce McIntosh was our president until
July last summer.
And then what happened?
Well, I had the opportunity to go to work at Queen's Park. A good friend who is now the MPP for Kitchener South Hespeler, Amy Fee, was staffing up. And frankly, I needed a job. I'd been unpaid as an advocate. My wife and I made that decision when we started the Autism Doesn't End at 5 campaign that, we didn't think we'd get a do-over about the age cutoffs and a chance to improve the system. So I took that time, but that was financially challenging. Got to the point where, well, I got to make some money. And so I asked for a job, and Amy very kindly said yes. I had hoped that in going there, I knew that the new government was going to take a look at the program. There were still some flaws that had to be fixed. I was very hopeful that that this government, and particularly a conservative government, was going to fix some of those things, like, and you've heard me say this so many times, the conflict of interest at those regional programs. We were complaining about that in our very first ask when we started the organization in 2005. Finally, that has been done. I'm very happy about that, actually. But the other things that were in the announcement yesterday, well, not so much. And they overshadow the good things. So
you left your job?
Yep.
And just when you thought you were out, we pulled you back in. And Bruce,
you don't do a very good Pacino, Karen.
I don't. We pulled you back again. Like,
pulled
you
me
back in. Okay.
He has a heart attack right after that,
Does he? Oh,
yeah.
no. That's right. Oh, dear. Okay. So if the province of Ontario can have a buck a beer policy, the Ontario Autism Coalition can offer a buck a year. Bruce?
Very generous.
For a buck a year, do you solemnly swear to be the protector of autistic children in the province of Ontario?
I've never not done that, so yeah, okay.
Will you work for us in trying to work with this government to stop age cutoffs and to stop flat rate funding?
My absolute level best.
Here you go.
I hope I can give you your money's worth.
Okay.
That's a contract, That's actually good and valuable consideration right there.
He's in. Okay. So there was an announcement. There was a press conference yesterday. Yeah. Can you synopsize what happened with Lisa MacLeod, who is the Minister of
Children, Community, and Social Services.
And this is the ministry that funds the autism program, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So she's the big boss in charge of the file.
That's right.
Right? Okay. And who is Amy Fee that was there at the press conference? You just mentioned her. You were working for her.
Right.
Yeah.
So Amy is, her role is what's called a parliamentary assistant. It's not very well defined in the House rules and so on, but essentially it's something more than just a private MPP who's going to focus on the issues for the ministry that she is attached to, and the minister can give the parliamentary assistant certain tasks to do. In fact, this government went a step or two further. They made her there are 2 parliamentary assistants for Minister MacLeod, and Amy is specifically tasked with children and autism. So, this was all part of my cause for optimism when I went there. But she was given responsibility for things like running the round tables and things of that sort, going out and listening to stakeholder groups and sort of bringing back the ideas that might be crafted into whatever the government was going to choose to do about the autism program to improve it. They ended up replacing it.
And we'll just say one last thing about Amy. Parents should know Amy was a member of the Ontario Autism Coalition. Yeah. She was heavily involved with leading a campaign to allow service dogs into schools. She was a friend to the OAC. And while we are troubled by the announcement that she decided to make and the position that she decided to make, we also know that if you are an MPP, you have to do what the boss tells you to do. That's the way the parliamentary politics works. Maybe some of us would not have made that choice, but please know that she's a human being, and we don't know whether or not she actually believes what she's saying, but we've got more important fish to fry. We're worried about the kids, and we're going to be talking about programs for the children and not insulting or fighting directly and making personal, having a personal tiff with anybody. Okay.
Yeah, I really want to just weigh in there more than a little bit.
Not too much, because we want to move on.
No, I understand that, but I spoke with Amy this morning. It was awkward. It was emotional, but we are still friends. I consider her a friend. We met on that Autism Doesn't End at 5 campaign. She came to our rallies. She visited my home when we had our housewarming.
Mm-hmm. I was there.
Yeah, you were.
I was there.
We shared the service dog issue. Kenner couldn't take Ivy to school, but my son Cliff could take Basil. And that's just, that brought us together too. And we made some progress on that issue.
Yeah.
So, we share a lot. We both have 2 children on the spectrum. A boy who is slightly older than the girl. And apart from the approximately 10 years between them, it's the same family.
Okay. All right. Good.
Okay.
So tell us more. What happened at this announcement yesterday? The minister said that the program that we had in place is unsustainable.
Yeah.
Therefore, she is making changes. What are these changes?
Well, essentially related to the way that funding is delivered. So one thing that we did bring away that is a good thing is that the funding will no longer be managed by the regional agencies, the regional programs that we have been complaining about since the very first ask. That is no longer the case. We're very happy about that. In the short term, it's going to be managed by Autism Ontario, and in the longer term, it's going to be managed by an agency that the government is going to create. Without many details, I suspect that it will be similar to the group that manages passport funding. So that was actually a positive. The problem, though, the minister focuses on the wait list, and I know that has been a cause for much grief and consternation. I understand the frustration of parents.
That's kind of our issue, isn't it?
Yep.
It's really exciting to hear a minister be so concerned and defending and standing up for the little guy and demanding that children get service faster and being irate that it's taking so long.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
kind of our line, isn't it?
Well, you know something? Yeah. That has been, when we started the OAC in 2005, my son was on the wait list, and I did some arithmetic. The age cutoff then, it wasn't that your funding was going to drop after age 6. It was that it would not exist after age 6. And that's what we went after them on. Mm-hmm. But I'd done the arithmetic, and it was clear to me that Cliff would turn 6 before he would get to the top of the wait list. Mm-hmm. And that really, you know, that was what got us started.
A continuing problem, right?
Yeah.
It was true 15 years ago. It was true 3 years ago, and maybe true today, right? Yeah. So you have your baby, you have a toddler. As the parents, you think something is different about my toddler. You go to the doctor. The doctor says, there, mom. Boys develop more slowly than girls, or there, all kids are different. And you take the baby home, you take the toddler home, you wait and you watch, you wait and you watch, and then you go back to the doctor. Does this sound familiar? You go back to the doctor and he says, oh, okay, I will send him in for a developmental assessment. Or
no.
Okay. I'm trying to go quickly.
Before that, well, they're not talking. Let's send them for audiologist hearing test.
A hearing test.
And they're not talking. Let's get them with a speech and language pathologist who can you know. And there's a waiting list for all of those things.
That's right. So quick cut to getting a developmental assessment, which could take a year to 2 years. You finally get your developmental assessment when your child is 4. That's about the average, right? When you're about 4, you get your assessment and the diagnosis, maybe another year, several months after that. And then, you've aged out of a program. So a very convenient way to cut waiting lists down and to reduce the number of kids in a program is to make the age limit such that by the time you get your diagnosis and by the time your number comes up, oh, well, this program's not going to be that good for you. That's really what is happening here. And that's what happened 15 years ago. That's what happened 3 years ago. Wait lists, we're with you. If you are frustrated and angry about wait lists, we're with you. Tell me, why is the wait list 23,000 people now, and a few years ago it was a lot fewer kids? Why suddenly is this?
Well, there's a few reasons. One is that, generally speaking, we're having higher rates of diagnosis. There's a debate going on in the community of psychologists about exactly why that is, whether there's actually a real increase in the number of cases, or whether it's just better access to diagnosis, better physician awareness. There's lots of ideas, and I don't think anybody has reached a firm conclusion about that. The other thing was that Michael Coteau, as part of
Michael Coteau?
He was the Liberal Minister for Children and Youth immediately before the election. I was about to say as a result of, I've said it now, haven't I? Our protest in 2016 was so effective that the Premier decided to replace Tracy McCharles as minister, and Michael Coteau was the fellow who stepped in. But he, as part of one of his announcements about changes to the program, was to point out that Children and Youth was responsible for services to kids up to age 18. And so the autism program would be available to kids up to age 18. And it always had been, quite frankly. The thing was that not everyone knew, and a lot of people were given the perception that, well, if you didn't get in by a certain point, and not everybody understands that there's no longer an age cutoff and a variety of things, but it was wonderful to hear him say it, but it brought a whole bunch of kids back to the program seeking service that had been there and had been discharged or had aged out or whatever the case may be. I think the shorthand we used for that was repatriated kids.
Yeah.
Not that it's wrong, it's just real.
So the wait list had different feeds that fed into it, right? So you had the little babies and the little ones who were recently diagnosed who are on a wait list. Mm-hmm. You also had people who were denied service.
Yes.
over the years who were older children, completely denied.
Mhm.
And you had, for various reasons, right? Maybe a dual diagnosis.
It went
maybe
back
just,
and forth so many times
yeah.
about, well, the kid might be too severe, they might not be severe enough. We actually had a project 2 years ago that was, we called it Operation Transparency. I didn't know that they made binders this thick, but we had 2 binders about, I think they were 8 or 9 inches thick, documenting the ethical errors that that the regional programs were making in how they were handling kids when they came to get in the program. Some of it was absolutely evil, and we took it to Minister Koto, and he was more than
astounded.
surprised. Yeah.
Yeah.
Astounded is a good word.
Astounded.
Politicians are paid to talk, and he didn't speak for a minute or two.
Yeah.
So, it was pretty clear that there were things going on at those regional programs that that were more than fishy.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's been a long-standing thing. But intake has always been an awkward sort of a thing. It's one of the recommendations that we've made that there has to be some degree of consistency in how those assessments are done and what recommendation is made as a result. To this day, except maybe not since yesterday, I'm not sure, but self-referral was possible. I think my kid has autism was enough to get on the wait list without anybody actually doing that developmental assessment. The other problems that we were having were things we called them prescription pad diagnosis. So if a medical doctor wasn't completely familiar with autism, wasn't equipped to do the developmental diagnosis, but looked at the red flags list, and maybe not everybody knows what that is, but it's a checklist of, I think there are 18 things to look for. So at a certain age, how many words is your child speaking? At a certain age, do they share attention? Will they show you an object and ask you to, play with them? And if enough of these things aren't happening, many people interpret that as being a signal that the child has autism. It is not.
So
it's a signal that a diagnosis.
I'm going to interrupt you because we're kind of going whoop,
way off track.
And we're going off a little
You're
off
right.
track. But that's just an example of how much this guy knows about the details and the pitfalls and the history of this program. You should have a points card. So we had a protest. They were going to cut this program for children under the age of 5. We had a protest in 2016. We got through. We had unprecedented access to Minister Couteau, and this guy, as well as a bunch of other smart parents and doctors and politicians, got together and revamped the program together. They weren't done though.
No, we weren't done by a long shot.
So tell us about the changes. Like, I'm thinking of diagnostic hubs. What was happening with that? What kind of changes were implemented, and what did you want to still happen?
Oh boy.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, that's a long list, and we've got 50 minutes.
We've got 15 minutes.
Okay. The big things were we were trying to combine 2 programs into one.
Yeah.
And we were trying to make it flexible so that children and youth that were getting into the program were going to get what they needed, rather than a sort of, well, I keep using this term, cookie cutter. So there was the IBI program that was 15 to 20 hours of therapy. And if you went over the 20 hours, you really, really had to fight for it. And that was what you got. You get what you get and you don't get upset. Well, it was upsetting because parents knew that, for the kids at the really high needs end, it should be more like 30 or 40 hours. That's what the research tells us. The other program was the ABA program that was delivered in very short 6 to 8 week blocks. And it wasn't really therapy with the kid. It was training the parent how to, I guess you'd say, manage the kid. But if it didn't go well, and when it ended, whatever the kid might have acquired by way of skills, many of them were regressing. And everybody knew that that wasn't enough. So there was either a lot that wasn't quite enough, or there was very, very little that wasn't quite enough. And so what we tried to do was move to a system that whatever number of hours that were needed based on the clinician's diagnosis and assessment, that's what the kid would be eligible for. And we did get to that point. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we didn't get done was a double check. So for the very high dollar and high hours behavior plans, nobody was taking a second look. Now, we didn't want a second look in the style that the regional programs had been doing this, which was, we're just going to try to give them as little as we possibly can. But just a double check to say, okay, have you got data to support this recommendation? What's your rationale? What do you intend to do with these hours? And then come back in 6 months and actually show us some progress. We didn't get to the point of rolling that out. A lot of time was spent on an appeals process for parents to contest if their kid wasn't getting the service that the parent felt they should, but we didn't get to the process of getting something in place to sort of protect the dollars in the system. One of the things this government has complained about, and they're right, is there have been instances of overbilling. And some of them have been pretty egregious. But with 8,000 or 9,000 kids in the system, 2 digits worth of these bad cases, bad actors billing too much for service, that's not what has really put the kibosh on the budget. The minister's office portrays it as being a much worse problem than it really is. They'd have us believe that every single practitioner is, doing fraudulent things. That's absolutely untrue.
So the minister said that she went to the Treasury and got more money for the kids. Thank you very much for doing that, Minister. And as of the fiscal year, they are out of money. The program is not sustainable. How is it that the money got burned up so quickly? And we don't have access to these stats, by the way. We're just going by what the ministry has told us, right? So we don't actually know. We don't have access to the numbers and the bank accounts. We don't know. But we've been told $100 million was promised and spent, and they have to do something drastic in order to save the program, right?
That's what we've been told.
That's what we've been told. So what happened? How did this money get all spent?
We've been told other things too.
Yeah.
And here's
just answer that.
Bruce. Okay. Here is what I know. I know that in August of last year, the minister went to management board and got $35 million to go into the program. And I was told also that in the fall, and I can't pin this down to exactly when, but that number went up to 62 million. So whatever the difference is 27 million. That's what came the second time. I never got told until just in these last couple of weeks that the whole 100 million had been asked for and spent. I'm, skeptical.
Know. We don't know.
I'm a little skeptical.
It'll
be a freedom of information request, and it'll be a close look at the government estimates when they come out in the new year.
So my kid,
new fiscal year.
My kid is at this beautiful center, right? And it took me a very long time to understand the how long and what intensity of service meant.
Right.
There really is a very large learning curve for the parent. And I know going in, because I was so anxious and I was waiting for this program and wanting my boy to start. And we actually had some false starts at centers that were not suitable for him. That was another lesson, but I won't go there. But it's not an easy road. trying to find the right placement for your child, to say in the least. And then to have a sense of how long it takes for your child to learn skills, basic life skills like toileting and cleaning themselves and eating, and much less playing, much less having a friend, much less being safe when they're crossing the street. I mean, the myriad of skills and talents that the child has to develop are huge. And there's no way to put an hourglass on that. Nope. Is the thing that I've learned. The other thing that I've learned in watching a very well run center is that it's really like a farm. You know, it's not the kids come in, the kids come out, right? And when you have a farm, there's a season for planting. There's a season for letting the sun, feed the crops and add fertilizer and let them grow. And then there's a harvest season. And then in the wintertime, you have to maintain your equipment. You have to fix the tractor. You have to fix the roof. And all of these children have their seasons are shorter and longer and have different timelines, and they're coming in and out and blossoming in all kinds of different ways. It's impossible to predict. And yet what I would see, just because I'm friends with many of the parents, because that's what happens, you become close, you become a little family yourself, is that children's hours are reduced over time. They're transitioned from one type of program to another type of program, all with the aim of working them through so that they are more ready to handle the outside world. And so a flat rate for all of the different children that I know for my own son is troubling. The other thing too is that as a mom, I will say, because I had no idea what I was in for and what my son was in for, I needed the clinician at my child's center to hold my hand and walk me through this process. If I had been given a flat rate of money, for example, and said, okay, go to the grocery store, pick a little OT here, pick a little SLP, pick a little of this. If I had made myself the clinician, I am sure that my son would not have made the gains that he made. That does not mean that he is not involved with other kinds of therapy. He most certainly is. And I wouldn't mind if another ministry took that over. If say the Ministry of Health wanted to cover SLP charges, that would be great.
Well, here's an interesting point about that.
I'll finish, and then you got the rest of the time. You got the rest of the time. But this program is so complicated, and we're still not finished. We weren't finished working on it, and now we've been sent backwards in time, maybe even to before your time. Maybe.
In a lot of ways.
How can we possibly ensure that a needs-based program is available for every child when all I can do is talk to you all from my experience is that you still have to figure out their needs when they're little. It takes quite a long time to sort that out. Okay, what were you going to say, boss?
Oh, it was just an observation when you say that SLP should be paid for.
It was just a for instance. That's all.
Well, but it's an important point. Yeah. Speech language pathologists have a college that recognizes them. Under Ontario law, they are what is called a regulated health professional. Mm-hmm.
Hey,
note the word health in there.
Are ABA practitioners regulated?
Nope.
Oh.
Been asking that for 15 or 16 years too.
Also an ask of the OAC.
Yes.
Yeah. So what does regulation mean, Bruce?
It means that there is a very high standard to which practitioners are held, that no one, as is the case right now, no one can go out there and call themselves a BCBA or a behavior analyst or behavior specialist if they're not overseen by the college. They got to be a member of the college, and that means the college takes a very close look at their qualifications, and if they don't measure up, they can't call themselves that.
Would that stop a practitioner from overbilling?
Well, there's other things about a college that do that.
Okay.
A disciplinary procedure is another part of it. So for and we see this often with doctors who overbill. They will be reported to the college's physicians and surgeons. And there's a disciplinary process there that if they've done this and they shouldn't have, they get their license pulled. This happens with teachers too. Any regulated professional that has a college, they're on the hook. They're responsible, and they can lose their right to practice if they do bad things. We're fortunate that we've got some very highly ethical practitioners in the province, but I can tell you from some firsthand knowledge, they're not all, and that really needs to improve.
Right.
But
so the OAC doesn't like the stinkers either.
No.
We don't like this big long waiting list. We don't like the people who exploit the system. And let's face it, there will always be people who will find loopholes and figure out how to do that. But we don't like them either. We don't like them either. Yep. Okay, I have a bunch of questions I'm going to read to you. We have got 25 minutes, and I'll try to scroll through and look at the questions that are being asked live. We're going to do more of these things, and also we mentioned Michael Couteau. He very generously is willing to do a Facebook Live with myself, and I'll ask Bruce if he'll tag along.
Good.
I'll ask him if he tag along, and we'll talk more about, I won't be able to get a word in edgewise, but I will try to make sure that they use common speech.
Oh my God, well, that's that Tim Porter off.
Keep it simple. But we'll talk about the history, and we'll also talk about politics in the sense of why is it and how is it that we were effective with Michael? What did we do? What did individuals do to impress upon the government of that time that they made a terrible decision and they had to change it? Okay, so here's the question. This is from Sharmina. Hi, Sharmina.
Hi, Sharmina.
Okay. The new PC plan does not address the clinical needs of children with autism to receive the intensive intervention and hours that they need in order for treatment to be effective. We should do something. Autism doesn't stop at 5. Oh, this is just more of a message. Please let them know that autism doesn't stop at 5 or 10. What do I do without ABA? He is progressing in therapy. Please reconsider your plan. Okay, Sharmina. We're with you.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a question now. Maxine, she says, my son, 6 years old, is currently receiving the OAP, Ontario Autism Program funding.
Good.
Will his previous funding be considered money towards the $55,000 he is supposed to get with the new funding? So just quickly, Bruce.
I do not know.
Right. The new funding model is supposed to be in effect when?
Well, I don't know when things will begin to happen.
Okay.
The minister is very adamant that this has to happen. I would imagine that they're going to be pushing forward pretty promptly, but that wasn't specified in the announcement. The time frames that were talked about were clearing the wait list in 1.5 to 2 years. So I would imagine they're going to begin work on that pretty quick.
So if people have been waiting, say, 2+ years, and they want to clear the wait list within 18 months, say, that's not really shortening the wait list, isn't it? Is it?
Well, one would hope that those on the list for the longest will be served first. I mean, that's the case now.
And the commitment is to increase the capacity of the diagnostic hubs, which was already started.
Yeah, an interesting point about that.
Yeah.
The minister is doubling the funding for those organizations. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because the sooner that you know, the sooner you can start to do something. But here's what, with the money that they had, they've already done a very good job to reduce the wait time for assessment from about 2 years down to below 1. I think it's about 8 months now. That's with the money that they had. They've been doing a really good job. Giving them more support in that,
great,
by all means.
Please.
But that's not where the big problem lay.
Okay, next question. We'll try to get back to that big problem.
Okay.
Altusa. My son is 5 and is on OAP funding, I believe, till the end of April. After a 2-year wait, that's when his 6 months plan ends. What do we do next? He will turn 6 in September. How will that affect him with budget changes from 0 to 5 years old? What about SSAH, Special Services at Home? It's another fund that's not part of the OAP. It's something else. What about SSAH? Will that be included in this new budget? FDR, what's that? FDR? I don't know what that is. Also included in that. Is FDR also included in that? Do you know what that is?
No,
I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. Thank you all for being so helpful. You're welcome. We have to help each other. Okay, so her kid will be turning 6. What will happen with her kid?
Well, according to what the minister announced, that child is going to be saddled with an annual cap on their funding of $5,000.
$5,000. So is that $5,000 a month?
That's $5,000 a year.
$5,000 a year. And
this is,
wait,
the number that the minister chose to talk about was that 140,000 cap from diagnosis to age 18. What she didn't want to tell you was that for kids under 6, there's going to be a 20,000 per year cap. And when they turn 6, the cap drops to $5,000.
Okay. And so,
wow.
If say you are doing, let's be conservative. If you are doing, if you are.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was a joke. Sorry.
Okay. Let's not be conservative. Let's say that your child,
that's you.
The clinician in charge, the CIC, has prescribed 30 hours a week is the proper plan for a child at the rate is $55 an hour that we're currently being funded. How much is that a year?
30 hours a week.
Somebody do the math?
52 weeks in a year. So 500. Oh my God. My brain and numbers aren't functioning right now.
Okay, put them on the spot.
30 times 50 is 1,500. Thank you, Bruce. I caught up. Good. Yeah, 1,500 hours.
1,500 hours. And they'll be receiving $20,000. So that is about.
It's not going to pay for it.
That's about 2.5 months of full-time hours.
Yeah.
That's about it. And then a cap on top of that. So a lifetime cap and a yearly cap. So that's it. Okay, so that's what's going to happen, my friend. Tammy.
Beyond which you're on your own, Jack.
And you're on your own. Tammy, also, do you have numbers for people in the north? Now, we should just say this is also fresh. We don't have numbers at all. And we have very little access to statistics from the government. A lot of our stuff is a couple of years old, right?
I have a few fresher things from the committee, but even that stuff is approaching.
But this is a good question. So Tammy says, for people in the north, like us, who were waiting for DSO spots to open because DFO is unavailable. So DSO is direct service option. DFO is
direct funding option.
This is important for new people to understand. There are 2 different kinds of centers. The DSO is what happens with the money?
They're directly contracted by the government, and they're given they were given the lump of money for their region of the province, and the parent never had to touch money. Whatever service the kid was getting was being paid for out of the pot that the regional center had.
That's good. And a DFO, DF as in Francis,
right,
is
where the family is given an amount of money with which to go out and hire a private sector provider who's not the agency directly contracted by the government. They're contracted by the parent, and the regional center gives them money to pay for the
Right.
service.
So Tammy's pointed out that in her area, which is outside of a city center, there are no direct
Yeah.
funded providers for her to choose from. So she goes to DSO. So she says, how much of the wait list does that make up? Can you tell us how
Oh, gosh.
families like mine are wondering where they're going to get anything now? So is she going to have a center to go to?
Okay. I can't give a numeric answer to the question because that's just not off the top of my head, and I'll tell you why. It's not just the north when we talk about underserved areas on the wait list. A lot of rural Ontario is poorly served as well.
And parts of city centers too.
Yeah.
Scarborough.
The shorthand we use for it, we call them service deserts.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, and this is another flaw with this notion that you're suddenly going to whip through the wait list. In some parts of Ontario, it does not matter how much money you give a family if they can't find a place to spend it. I mean, that's that, right?
Are there enough ABA instructor therapists in the province for all of the children that we know have diagnoses?
Short answer, no. Depending where you are and who you ask, the shortage may be in instructor therapists. It may be in clinical supervisors. That varies back and forth. This is one of the things. Okay, so what the government is rolling out right now is one of the options that the advisory committee was presented with. And we looked at it, and it just, it didn't smell right to me. So in not a formal, polling science kind of way, but more in a survey monkey kind of way, which is what it was. I put together just a quick survey. And because I'm a member of ONTABA as an associate member, not a professional, I had access to their membership list. Autism Ontario was kind enough to send the survey out to their list of practitioners on the Abacus list. And for the princely sum of $10, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board sent it out.
All right.
We found out that not only weren't there enough now, service capacity would only increase after a year by between 25 and 30%. Nowhere near the whole wait list. What that means is like 8,000 kids in service at the time, roughly, and it would go up then to between 10 and 11,000. Mm-hmm. Like, holy moly.
So if the investment is going to be front loading and helping kids get their diagnosis quicker, great. Thank you very much. We love that. And then there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
How do we help people with that if there's nowhere to go, if there are no centers?
Well, one answer is the government could be proactive about this. For years and years, there was something that they called the Grant Assistance Program. Now, sadly, it was only available to employees in the regional centers. It wasn't available to private sector providers, but it would pay at least some of the costs of
training,
building
right?
the certification level.
Okay,
so that was one way.
Oh, sorry.
The other way,
yeah,
and this is a hard thing to hear, but it was kind of be patient. So the real money from what we negotiated with the government during 2016 started to roll out in 2017. And I started getting calls from businesses that do ABA service in the United States who were interested in opening shop here. I answered a lot of questions about this, and it began to happen, but these people had to deal with immigration issues. They had to deal with taxation issues. They had to deal with labor law. There were a lot of things, and they actually started setting up shop about a year or a little more than a year ago, and more capacity, but it's slow.
I got to stop you, hon. And I think maybe those of you who are new, you
Got
might be
another door?
getting a sense, you might be getting a sense now of how complex this issue really is. And I realize that if you're new and you're upset, that we're throwing a lot of information your way. We don't
You
have.
can rewind.
You can rewind, but also it's the issue is not as simple as let's front load everything,
it's
get
not.
the diagnosis, get the kids diagnosed faster. If we don't have centers for them to go to and we don't have therapists for them to work with, that is a big problem. The other problem is with this flat rate.
Yeah.
So I want to circle back to that. So let's say, for example, you receive $20,000 for your child, and that will cover maybe, a couple of months, let's say 2.5 months. Most ABA providers are very ethical people. Even though they're not regulated, they have their own ethics and standards of practice. If you have a child who is affected severely by their autism, let's say, for example, and this is I know extreme, but there might be somebody watching. You've got a poop smearer, a headbanger, a kid who wears a helmet, a kid who's not speaking. An ethical provider is going to take you into their office and is going to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you, because I cannot ethically take your $20,000 and start the process of assessment and start a program and then have to say to you, I'm sorry, your child has to leave unless you come up with another $60,000 for the year. That's the reality that we're facing. And that is why needs-based assessments are essential. They're the most essential element of this whole process, because you need a plan and you need a clinician to be on your side. If your child needs less and you don't need all of the money that you're being given, they can claw it back and give it to a kid who does need it. We're not about shutting anybody out. We're about including all children. So look at this with open eyes. Even if you're looking at an amount and going, wow, $20,000 is a lot of money. Think about it. Do the math. Go see a provider and talk to them about your child. If they say, no, I won't take your child, then you know you want your kid in there because they're ethical, because they're an ethical provider.
It could be very, very little money, even though it may seem to some people like a lot. And here's what. These programs, at the high end, a kid that's getting 30 to 40 hours a week, those can run to $70,000 or $80,000 in a year. But even for the kids that are getting 20 to 25 hours, that's still going to run you 50 grand, 40 or 50 grand. So the funding is being slashed in half. Here's where my big argument is with means testing. You leave the people who are least able to top up that funding eligible for the program. And you know what's going to happen? They won't be able to top up the funding. So there's no point in them taking the 20 grand, and they're going to walk, and the kid's going to get nothing because the parent doesn't have the resources to do it. And that's not my Ontario.
Mm-hmm. It's not my Canada either.
So
Tracy asks, no, we did Tracy. Mehreen asks, what will happen to those currently receiving DSO, direct service option? Will that be terminated? If yes, effective at what date? If no, when will the changes take effect so that we don't have a gap? Those who waited 2 years to get this therapy and recently started, will they receive backdated money because they were just sitting in line where they could have received the recently announced amount and started early intervention? What happens if there aren't enough therapists? We touched on that. And we have to find private therapists who charge more than $55 an hour. Can they explain?
Yes. So
good questions.
Okay, if I miss something, along the way bring me back, because there was a bunch of stuff.
If you're in DSO currently, what's going to happen?
Well,
do you know?
I do not know for certain, but what I suspect, as we said earlier, the minister is hell-bent on this happening as quickly as possible. But I will be surprised if you're still in the same situation when your current service contract expires, whether that's in 6 months or a year. Different regions do things different ways. There's another aspect of this. Because of that move to a completely direct funded system, those regional agencies no longer have their hand in the cookie jar. They'll be subject to the same conditions that every provider is. And I'm not sure that they will all want to stay in the ABA business. I would hope that they do. Now, their staff who are trained will, perhaps go out and set up shop on their own or go to work for another existing provider. I don't know. I would hope that that would happen, but I can't guarantee you that the regional provider that you're dealing with now is going to be doing this service in 6 months, because they're losing that special status. And about the price. So up until about 2 years ago, the hourly rate that the government subsidized for direct funding was $39. It always cost more than that. It cost our family more than that, 12 years ago when my kid was in the program. That rate went up to 55. Everybody knew it had to go up to 55. But what's going to happen when you have those other tens of thousands of families with a kid on the list who suddenly get at least some funding and they come knocking on the door? Well, supply and demand would suggest that the rate's going to go up. If there's more people looking for the same thing, the price goes up. And that's not going to be good for anyone. One of the things that was on that roadmap that the advisory committee left prior to the election was setting up a rate card, similar to what's used in the medical business or the dental business when they bill insurance, that each thing costs a certain amount, a range that you can charge for an hour of therapy, direct therapy, an hour that you can charge for the psychologist or BCBA who's supervising. This is done in great detail in the United States. They have very specific rate cards, but that didn't exist up here. We had no idea what the regional programs were really charging.
What's a rate card?
It would specify what each component piece can what the bill can be.
So a price list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I go to get a filling, it costs this much. If I go to get a root canal, it costs that much. If I go in for just a general checkup with my doctor, it costs this much. If he gives me my flu shot, it costs that much. This is all worked out in being able to control the costs and predict the costs in the program.
Right.
We didn't have it. We still don't.
We literally have 1 minute.
Oh,
I
gee.
apologize that we can't go longer. I
We'll
have to
do
pick
this
up my
again.
child. And I apologize too that we kind of got off to a sloppy start. It's hard because these issues are extremely complex. If you're new, don't panic. It will start to make sense. I see an awful lot of comments happening on my screen here. There are a ton of parents in the community who are a little bit farther down the line than the new parents who will help you. Reach out, please reach out, and things will start to demystify. This is an excellent question. And since they are cutting on all amounts, will they increase the support at school? Probably not. TDSB, something I don't know what she wrote here, but it doesn't have enough funds for individual assistance for children. We've certainly done a lot of work on that as well. Check our website for our work on exclusion and other issues. So yeah, are the schools going to be ready for the kids who are not going to be able to, parents who are not going to be able to keep them in their programs?
They're not ready now. They haven't been ready for a very long time. It's going to take real political will to fix that problem. And it is a serious problem. One of the most interesting developments over the last year and a half or 2 years is that the OAC has forged some very strong relationships with the unions that represent teachers and education assistants, because they have problems in classrooms because of the lack of behavior analysis, either from already trained professionals to come in or training of the staff, the school staff themselves. The OAC has been pushing for this since it's something that Dalton McGuinty promised when he was running to be premier in 2003, and we've yet to see it. And you know what? At a news conference yesterday, I heard Lisa MacLeod say that she was working with Lisa Thompson, the Minister of Education, to get this done. Well,
please do.
Still waiting. I wish you were just as enthusiastic about that as
the
about
cuts.
the wait list.
Yeah,
like,
the wait list.
Really.
Championing our children is what we're looking for. We are looking for that. So let's wind down. And there's a perfect question for that. Where can we find template letters for our MPPs for those of us that need some help? So it is nerve-wracking calling your MPP. I don't like to do it either. And setting up a meeting. Are there some tools that we can provide to help people with writing letters and setting up meetings and what to say to their MPP?
There is, or very soon will be, and I honestly have not checked today on its status. We've been working on what we call the MPP kit that does all of those things: how to write a letter, how to get a meeting, the follow-up stuff, what to expect when you get there, all of those kinds of things. We had one 3 years ago. We've updated it to work this time. I honestly do not yet know whether it's been posted in the Facebook group, but if it hasn't, it's going to be any minute. We were working on it yesterday. I had to step aside. I owe actually everybody a little bit of an apology. I haven't touched Facebook. I woke up this morning and I just saw, about the notifications, like 99 plus, and about a dozen friend requests, and I don't know how many PMs and message requests, and I have not been able to keep up. Yeah. And I'm sorry. I'm going to try to get back to that tonight.
I think we can forgive you. Bruce just resigned his position yesterday morning. He just resigned, and our board of directors is full of some sensational parents and autistic self-advocates, and we have been preparing for this. We have been worried about the program for quite some time. He was not involved, and the MPP kits have been put together by our team. I see that Christine Rogue is watching. There are some amazing, hi Christine.
Phone call, yeah, please.
They're amazing writers and thinkers, and many of us, if not the majority of us who serve on the board of directors, we were involved in that fight in 2016. And we've gotten better. We've gotten better.
Yeah, we have. A lot better.
Thank you, everybody. To be continued. I'm going to bring Michael Couteau in. I'm also going to bring a BCBA to talk about therapy and the process of assessment and what happens when you start in a center, to give people a sense of how much time it takes to get your kids settled in a program, and then starting to see your child thrive rather than survive. That's what we're about. Needs-based supports. Go ahead. Needs-based supports for every child that needs help, who needs therapy. We are not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere.
What she said.
Okay.
It's been something we've been working towards for years and years, and it's just been taken away.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely unacceptable.
Please don't be fooled.
If we have to stay at this, like, look, the organization we're in here was founded almost 14 years ago. It hasn't gone away. It's not going to go away. And we have been really, really good at persistence. One of the other dads that was a co-founder used to say, you know, our kids are diagnosed with perseverative behaviors. We have some perseverative behaviors.
What does that mean?
We're going to stick at this. I swear to you, we are going to stick at this until it's right. I've been there when it was wrong, and I can't live with that. So I couldn't live with it in the spot where I was at up until about noon yesterday. We're not going to give up.
Yeah.
It's just not an option.
Don't give up. Don't give in. Keep your eyes open. Pay attention. Really think about what you're being told. We have nothing to lose. We're just parents.
You know what?
Just
That's
like
right.
you. We're just parents. Our bosses are our children. More soon. Good luck. Peace. Good luck.